Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take these huge, world-changing blueprints and just, lay them out for you piece by piece so you get the full picture without having to read thousands of pages.
And for a while now, we've been tracking this really incredible, almost unbelievably ambitious project to create a unified Islamic military doctrine.
Right, what people have been calling a Muslim NATO. We talked a lot about the why, the geopolitics, the demographic weight, the big picture goal of creating this massive defense umbrella.
But today, we're doing something, I think something critical. We are shifting gears entirely. We're moving past the high-level theory, beyond the diplomatic handshakes and speeches.
We're getting to the nuts and bolts.
Exactly. The deep mechanics of implementation. We are asking the single most important question that decides if an alliance of this scale, we're talking potentially 57 nations, can actually work in the real world.
And that question isn't if they should unite. The question is, how on earth do you practically fuse 57 separate independent military organizations into one coherent, functional fighting force?
It's the multi-trillion-dollar question, really.
It really is. I mean, it's one thing for leaders to sign a treaty in a fancy room, declaring unity. That's the easy part. The whole other thing, to make sure that, say, a tank crew from Oman can seamlessly call for close air support from a Turkish jet pilot during a joint operation in a hostile zone under fire. Any friction, any delay in that exchange isn't just inefficient, it's mission failure. It's lives lost.
Absolutely. So this deep dive, it's focused laser sharp on the one pillar that every successful modern alliance, and every failed one for that matter, survives or collapses on.
Joint training and interoperability.
That's it. This is the core concept. We're calling it the engine of unity. If you think of the collective political will as the fuel for this project, then standardized training and interoperability is the entire machine. It's the engine block, the transmission, the drive shaft, the GPS. Without all those pieces working in perfect sync, all you have is a very expensive, very heavily armed, and completely stationary vehicle.
All that raw firepower is neutralized because it can't coordinate. It's operational silence.
Precisely.
So our mission today for you is to get into the nitty-gritty, the mechanics of this transformation, at least according to the blueprint. How does it plan to take, 30, 40, maybe more armies?
Yeah.
Each with its own history, its own language, its own gear.
Its own culture.
Its own culture. And actually make them function as one single force. It means standardizing everything. And I really mean everything, from the caliber of the bullets in a rifle to the encrypted comms codes, all the way up to the fundamental tactics that officers learn in their war colleges.
We're looking at that critical, granular, and honestly often tedious process where theory becomes muscle. It's not about the budget, which is obviously enormous, but about those mechanical steps that ensure when a conflict actually starts, every single soldier, no matter what flag was on their uniform in basic training, is speaking the same unified language of war.
That's the real difference, isn't it? The difference between a political statement and a genuine military power.
It's the only difference that matters on a battlefield.
Okay, let's start digging into this. And I think a good place to start is by challenging how we normally think about military strength. When you, the listener, hear military power, what comes to mind? Probably the flashy stuff, right?
No, absolutely. Stealth jets, massive aircraft carriers, the newest tanks rolling out.
Or just the sheer size of the budget. Billions and billions of dollars. The assumption is just, if you spend more, you're stronger, period. But this doctrine we're looking at, it argues that view is not just superficial, it's dangerous.
It's a trap. The blueprint is crystal clear on this point. Hardware is secondary. It's critically secondary to the human and the doctrinal element. True military power, the kind that wins long, high-stakes wars and actually maintains stability, is built on 6 pillars. And this is where the doctrine really redefines strength.
And these pillars, they force you to look past the shiny objects, past the hardware, and into the deep institutional culture of an army.
Exactly. So according to the document, the 6 pillars in their order of operational importance are, first, discipline and training. That's your foundational individual soldier skill.
Right.
Second, doctrine and communication. That's the standardized playbook, the framework for how the team operates. And then finally, the third pair, interoperability and a shared battlefield culture. That last one is the ultimate test of cohesion.
Wow. So what strikes me is that 4 of those 6 pillars are explicitly about shared knowledge, about systems, about relationships, not about buying more stuff.
Not at all. Discipline and training make the soldier ready. Doctrine and communication make sure the whole army knows the rules and can talk to each other. But that last pair, interoperability and shared culture, That's where the magic happens, or, where the disaster happens. It's the real acid test of an alliance.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure, think of it like this. You could have the most advanced, most expensive fighter jet on the planet. But if that pilot cannot instantly and effectively communicate with, say, Allied ground troops who are under fire and need protection or targeting info, that multi-billion-dollar piece of technology is, in that moment, operationally useless in a joint theater. So victory isn't determined by the money spent on the jet. It's determined by the quality of the training and the communication systems that made that cooperation seamless.
And this is where the historical context in the source material really becomes key. The blueprint points directly, and I mean directly, at NATO's 70-plus years of success as the model. The mandatory example this new alliance has to follow.
It's not subtle about it, and it stresses that NATO didn't survive and grow because all its members went out and bought the same rifle in 1949. That level of standardization took decades.
So what was the secret sauce then?
No, NATO succeeded because its member armies learned the same language of war. And this is so much deeper than just adopting English as the main operational language, although that's obviously a huge part of it.
So what does language of war actually mean in practice?
It means that if a French officer, during a huge joint exercise, calls for a specific artillery fire mission, let's call it a danger close fire mission.
Okay.
A Polish unit or a Canadian unit or an American unit understands exactly the tactical procedure, the precise terminology, the safety boundaries, and all the technical requirements of that request, instantly, without a moment of hesitation or confusion.
So they share the exact same vocabulary for everything. For movement, for calling in fire support, for requesting more supplies.
For casualty evacuation, for the command structure itself. That uniformity, that doctrinal consensus, that's the real linguistic unity that lets these incredibly complex operations work under the pure chaos of a battle.
And the blueprint basically says this is the non-negotiable lesson that the Muslim world has to learn, and fast.
With extreme urgency. They have to go from what they are now, which is a collection of sovereign, often incompatible military forces, into a single, cohesive fighting instrument. And the only way to forge that is with this shared linguistic and doctrinal framework.
The power isn't in the total number of soldiers they can count up.
Not at all. The power is in their immediate, unified, predictable action. The real strength is in the common training manual, not the size of the armory.
Okay, so if that's the goal, this unified language of war, that leads us right into the sheer, staggering scale of the problem they have right now, the interoperability gap.
It's immense, and we really have to break this down, because when you look at 57 different nations, all with different histories of buying equipment, I mean, some bought from Russia, some from the US, some from Europe, some from China, the hurdles are they're astronomical.
You really have to understand the depth of the problem to appreciate the ruthlessness of the proposed solution.
Exactly. So let's list them out. First, the most obvious one, the equipment. You have wildly different weapons platforms, but more importantly, you have different ammunition.
Right. This seems so basic, but I guess it's a huge deal.
It's a showstopper. Even if two countries use rifles that look kind of similar, if their bullets are incompatible, say, one uses the 5.56 millimeter NATO standard and the other uses the 7.62 millimeter Russian standard, they cannot resupply each other on the battlefield, not in the heat of the moment. Your supply chain just breaks instantly.
And that problem just gets bigger and bigger as you go up the chain, right?
Yeah.
To tanks, artillery.
It scales up exponentially. Think about artillery. If one country's artillery shells are based on an old Soviet design and they just physically won't fit or can't be safely fired by another country's modern digitally guided guns, well, your joint fire support just became unpredictable, or more likely, impossible.
That's a complete breakdown of what military theorists call combined arms warfare, isn't it?
It's a devastating breakdown, and maybe we should pause on that, because combined arms is a critical concept for the listener to grasp.
Yeah, let's do that. Why is something as simple as matching ammunition so central to that idea?
Because combined arms is the gold standard. It's how modern wars are won. It's the synchronized, coordinated use of all your different branches. Infantry, armor, artillery, air power, to create an effect that's greater than the sum of its parts.
A symphony of destruction, so to speak.
A very violent symphony, yes. So if your infantry gets pinned down by enemy fire, they need tanks to break through. The tanks, in turn, need artillery to suppress anti-tank weapons. The artillery might need air power to protect it from enemy jets. It's all connected.
I see.
Now, if the nation providing that artillery cover runs out of their specific shells, in a perfect world, they should be able to get more from the infantry supply trucks or the armored division's depot. But if the ammunition doesn't match the gun, the whole system collapses. The pieces can't support each other. The symphony becomes noise.
That really makes the push for standardization totally non-negotiable. But it's not just the hardware, the physical stuff. The next problem is procedural.
Exactly. Every single military has its own standard operating procedures, their SOPs. This is the ingrained culture of how you do things, the specific way your troops move when they assault a building, the exact protocol for setting up a defensive perimeter, the sequence of commands for an air defense system.
These are all different from country to country.
Massively different. And if one commander expects an action to take, say, 30 seconds, because that's what his training says, but an allied unit's SOP says it's a 2-minute procedure, you've just introduced a catastrophic delay and total unpredictability right when you need absolute certainty.
And then there are the communication systems, another silo.
A huge one. Even if the soldiers themselves are speaking the same verbal language, the radios they're using, the encryption codes, the frequency bands, the digital data links, if those aren't technically compatible, the result is the same. Operational silence. You can't share targeting data securely. You can't coordinate.
And we can't ignore the actual human language barrier either.
No, even beyond the geopolitics. Sure, senior officers might use English professionally in meetings, but on the ground, in a firefight, a life-or-death tactical call often defaults to your native tongue. And if you have dozens of different languages in one formation at the platoon level, it just grinds rapid decision-making to a halt.
But the doctrine points to something even deeper, right? A gap that truly shapes how officers think and plan. The differences in their training and their doctrine.
This is the big one. It's the software of the mind. If one country trains its officers using a doctrine that's all about high-speed light infantry maneuver, maybe they were trained by U.S. Special Forces.
Right.
And another country trains its officers in a more static, defensive, counterinsurgency mindset because of their own local history. Well, their strategies are going to clash. They will literally look at the same battlefield map, see the same enemy movement, and come to completely different conclusions about what to do next.
That's a fascinating insight. If their senior commanders were all educated in different, sometimes rival war colleges, one in Moscow, one in Paris, one in the U.S., they just don't have that shared baseline of trust or professional knowledge. They can't confidently delegate a critical decision to an officer they don't know who thinks about war in a completely different way.
And that's the so what of all this. The bottom line of all this logistical and doctrinal mess is devastatingly simple.
What is it?
Right now, as things stand, these armies cannot fight as one integrated army. It's impossible. They can fight next to each other, maybe in separate zones as allies, but they cannot be integrated into a single force under a single command.
And the whole point of this Muslim NATO structure is to fix that permanently.
To solve that dilemma from the ground up by building a unified command and training architecture, it's a logistical nightmare that demands standardization at every single level. From the bullet of private carries to the strategic philosophy taught to a 4-star general. It's a total cultural and mechanical rebuild.
So how do they propose to do it?
Yeah.
To tackle this gargantuan challenge?
The blueprint lays out a very centralized 3-tiered solution, and it's focused almost entirely on educational institutions. The strategy is, well, it's brilliant in its simplicity, really.
Which is?
The fastest way to unify armies is to unify the minds of the people who command them. The whole goal is to make sure doctrine flows from the very top, from one source, all the way down to the tactical level without any distortion.
So you start by homogenizing the officer corps. The unity begins not with the troops on the ground, but with the people drawing up the plans and giving the orders.
Precisely. And at the very top of this structure, the apex institution is the proposed Muslim Defense University, or MDU, and its location is key. It's planned for Islamabad.
Okay, Islamabad. And this MDU is meant to be the intellectual nerve center of the whole alliance.
Yeah.
Kind of like a NATO defense college, but maybe with more direct power.
Much more doctrinal control. Its functions are all-encompassing, focusing on joint officer training for the highest ranks. And it's not just teaching old-school military history. The curriculum is specifically designed to tackle the modern, often unconventional security threats that affect the entire alliance.
And that curriculum must be pretty revealing.
It's incredibly revealing. Of course, it has high-level war courses, that's standard, But the blueprint highlights a few specialized areas that are absolutely vital for a nuclear-armed alliance. The first one is nuclear strategy familiarization.
Okay, let's stop right there. That is a massive detail, demands a closer look.
Yeah.
Why is it so critical to standardize nuclear strategy across the whole alliance, even for countries that don't have nuclear weapons?
Because the nuclear capability held by one member, in this case Pakistan, is seen as the ultimate security guarantee for the entire alliance. For that nuclear shield to be credible, every senior officer from every member nation, especially the non-nuclear ones, must have the exact same standardized understanding of the rules.
What kind of rules?
Nuclear command authority, escalation control. What are the red lines and what happens when they're crossed? What are the communication protocols during a nuclear crisis? And what are the ultimate geopolitical consequences of deterrence failing? If different allied commanders interpret those red lines differently, the whole concept of a unified shield becomes unstable. It becomes prone to catastrophic miscalculation.
So standardizing this knowledge is really about standardizing the concept of existential risk.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's not about giving everyone the bomb. It's about giving every key decision maker the same instruction manual for when the bomb becomes relevant.
Fascinating. What else is on the MDU curriculum?
It also focuses heavily on advanced intelligence education and, critically, cyber and space warfare doctrine. This goes right back to the interoperability gap we talked about. If different nations are using their own separate proprietary systems for network defense,
they can't fight off a coordinated cyber attack together.
Exactly. The MDU makes sure there is a single alliance-wide doctrine that governs how they defend their networks and how they operate in these crucial modern domains.
And the requirement to attend really underlines how central this place is meant to be.
It does. The doctrine is explicit. All senior Muslim officers are intended to graduate from the MDU. That single rule makes this university the most important institution for forging the collective strategic mind of the entire alliance. It's designed to erase decades of different military educations from all over the world.
Okay, so that's the top tier, the strategic brain. What's next down the chain?
The second tier is a series of combined staff and war colleges. These are designed to provide more specialized, domain-specific expertise. They're vital for regional operations, for the actual theaters of war where the alliance might have to fight.
And these are spread out geographically, which seems significant.
Very significant. The blueprint earmarks Riyadh, for example, to focus on Middle East geopolitics and strategic studies.
Which makes sense. They can use the region's own complex history and current challenges as a real-time classroom.
Precisely. Riyadh would become the center for desert warfare tactics, regional stability analysis, and the unique challenges of the Gulf. Then you have Ankara, specializing in air war doctrine and counterterrorism.
Again, playing to Turkey's strengths. They have extensive operational experience and advanced capabilities in those areas, especially with drones and integrated air defense.
Exactly. And finally, the blueprint names Cairo for Naval Command. Again, perfect geographical sense. Egypt controls the Suez Canal, a major maritime choke point, and has a long history of naval operations.
So the MDU in Islamabad creates the single unified strategic mind, but these specialized colleges ensure that the specific expertise needed for air, land, and sea is developed with regional knowledge. It connects the central doctrine to the local reality.
It marries them together. But as you said earlier, a doctrine is just a theory in a book if it doesn't get to the front lines. And that brings us to the third tier.
The Junior Leaders Academy.
This is where the rubber truly meets the road. This is all about ensuring tactical unity right at the point of contact, where battles are actually won or lost.
And these are planned for places like Karachi and Kuala Lumpur. And their target audience is very specific.
Very. They're focused on training non-commissioned officers, NCOs, as well as platoon leaders and company commanders. And that focus on NCOs is so important.
Why them specifically?
Because NCOs, your sergeants, your corporals, they are the professional backbone of any good army. They're the ones who execute the orders, who train the new recruits, who maintain discipline. They are the constant, while generals and politicians may come and go.
So if the MDU provides the brain, the NCOs are the spinal cord, the reliable nervous system.
That's a great analogy. By training them at this granular, execution-focused level, the Alliance makes sure that the big, fancy strategies from the MDU are actually implemented with unified, standard procedures by the smallest combat units. The explicit goal is to achieve rigid, tactical-level unity.
So a company commander from Saudi Arabia and one from Malaysia will both know the exact same formations, the same rules of engagement, the same procedures for a combined arms assault.
making the overall force exponentially more effective and, crucially, more predictable under the stress of combat. This whole tiered architecture, from the strategic vision and nuclear doctrine at the top down to the tactical execution at the bottom, is the skeleton on which this entire unified force is meant to be built. It's a total reboot of the military education system across dozens of nations.
Okay, so the mind is unified, the doctrine is written, the schools are mapped out. But a doctrine is just words until you put the tools in the soldiers' hands and, make sure those tools can actually work together.
Right. Now we move from the intellectual framework to the, let's be honest, the less glamorous but absolutely vital mechanical backbone of the whole thing, standardization.
This is where the political ideas become technical specs on a page.
It's the hard engineering of a massive alliance. And the blueprint breaks it down into 4 key areas, starting with that basic problem we talked about earlier, weapons standardization.
And the goals here are twofold, right? Lower costs and higher efficiency on the battlefield.
Exactly. On the cost side, it's simple economies of scale.
Yeah.
If all your members are buying the same ammunition for the same standard issue rifle, you can place enormous bulk orders, driving down the price for everyone.
But the real prize is the battlefield efficiency.
That's the operational point. If you're all using the same ammo calibers, you can resupply each other instantly. That supply chain break we identified as a core failure point, it disappears.
Yeah.
This is all about being able to sustain a long, high-intensity conflict.
And the plan isn't just about bullets. It calls for a gradual shift towards joint procurement systems for everything.
Everything. It's about compatible artillery systems and, crucially, unified missile platforms.
Why are unified missile platforms so important?
Think about integrated air defense. It's the key to survival for any modern force. If you have 10 different nations all bringing their own surface-to-air missile systems to the fight, and none of them can talk to each other or share missiles, it's chaos.
It's a mess.
A unified platform means they can share targeting data seamlessly, and a missile from one nation's stockpile can be loaded onto another nation's launcher. It makes deployment, replacement, and maintenance possible across the entire defense umbrella. But it does require huge cooperation from all their national arms industries.
Okay, so that's the hardware. The second area is communication standardization. If you can't talk, you can't fight.
And the doctrine is very firm here. It mandates one interchangeable communication language, English plus Arabic.
That's interesting. English and Arabic, why both? English makes sense for global interoperability. A lot of military tech uses it.
Right. English is the global standard, and a lot of the nomenclature for tactics comes from NATO. But adding Arabic is a fascinating and pragmatic move. It's the common regional language for many of the core founding members.
So is that just a cultural nod, or is there a real operational reason for it?
I think it's a very clever operational reason hiding inside a cultural nod. English is essential for the high-tech systems and for communicating outside the alliance. But in a high-stress firefight, people often revert to their native language. By making the secondary standard Arabic, the mother tongue of many key players, they ensure that fast, tactical chatter between core units can happen naturally without having to mentally translate through English.
It builds comfort while keeping the technical rigor.
Exactly. And of course, beyond the human language, the tech itself has to be unified. That means secure, encrypted, alliance-wide communication systems. A single, standardized network for sharing real-time data, intelligence, and commands without friction, delay, or the risk of being intercepted. That's a massive IT project.
Okay, that brings us to the third, and maybe the most detailed area, tactical procedures, the SOPs. This is the stuff that outsiders never see, but it's where battles are won.
This is where the real complexity is. Because it's about standardizing the tiny microscopic actions of every soldier. It's not enough to just say, the infantry will now advance. You have to define how they advance. What are the specific formations? What are the rules for engaging a target? What's the exact protocol for calling in a medevac?
So what are some of the specific SOPs the blueprint says have to be unified?
The document gets very specific. It lists things like infantry maneuvers, making sure 2 battalions from different countries move and react in the exact same predictable way, air defense protocols, which is absolutely critical for preventing friendly fire incidents.
Fratricide.
Right, and for coordinating targets. It also lists combined arms operations, the synchronization of tanks, infantry, and air power we discussed, and then really specific scenarios like urban warfare procedures, which require incredibly precise, standardized rules for breaching a door, clearing a room, and avoiding civilian casualties.
And things like counterinsurgency and even hostage rescue.
Exactly. Specialized scenarios where a few seconds of hesitation or confusion can mean mission failure. Standardizing these tiny battlefield behaviors is what turns a diverse group of soldiers into a single, predictable fighting machine. It removes the need to constantly translate intent in the middle of a crisis.
And all of the standardization, the gear, the comms, the SOPs, it all gets tested in the fourth and final area.
The ultimate test. Joint exercises. These are planned as annual massive exercises. They're the final exam for all the new training, all the new SOPs, all the new systems.
This is the rehearsal for war. It's where you find the weak spots under pressure. And the source material even gives names to some of these planned exercises.
It does. We see names like Operation Unity Shield, which sounds like a huge defensive exercise, protecting the alliance's shared borders. Then there's Desert Falcon, which would obviously focus on desert warfare, fast maneuvers, and air power over open terrain.
And Ocean Brotherhood.
Clearly a naval exercise, securing sea lanes and critical choke points. And finally, the mountain lion exercises, which suggests a focus on tough, high-altitude or forested terrain, testing light infantry and logistics.
So these exercises force everyone, from generals down to privates, to use the new standardized systems under maximum stress. It's where you find the friction points and refine that unified muscle memory.
It's how the doctrine gets lived, not just read.
Yeah, within this huge project of standardization and training, the blueprint gives a very specific and very special role to one country in particular.
It does. It identifies Pakistan as the nation best suited to become the training heart of the entire alliance.
And the document is clear. This isn't just a political choice. It's based on a long history of pre-existing relationships and, frankly, a set of world-class educational facilities that already exist.
That existing network is the key to immediate credibility. Pakistan already has a deep history of training officers and personnel from many of the key nations in this proposed alliance. We're talking Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, Jordan, Malaysia, Nigeria, many others.
So a big chunk of the current and next generation of military leaders in those countries already have a shared experience. They already have a common doctrinal foundation that was laid in Pakistan.
That is an incredibly powerful, ready-made trust mechanism. Officers who were classmates, who went through the same tough courses together, who built those professional bonds, they're the ones who will be leading these combined operations. You trust your classmate in a battle in a way you can never trust a stranger.
And the quality of the institutions themselves is a major factor. They aren't starting from zero. These are globally respected centers of military excellence.
Which gives the whole training system instant gravity. Let's look at the list provided in the source.
Go ahead.
You're talking about places like PMA Kakul, the Pakistan Military Academy. It's often compared to Sandhurst in the UK or West Point in the US. It provides that top-tier discipline foundation for officers.
It also mentions NUS.
Yes, the National University of Sciences and Technology. This is vital. It provides the cyber, tech, and engineering backbone for a modern military. Then you have the specialized colleges, the Air War College, the Naval War College, the prestigious Command and Staff College, and finally, the SSG training centers for elite special operations forces.
The fact that US is on that list is really telling. It shows this isn't just about old-school infantry tactics. It's about integrating cutting-edge science and tech, aerospace engineering, computer science, logistics automation right into the core doctrine.
It absolutely is. These institutions provide the full spectrum of training, from basic commissioning to advanced strategic thought to elite special forces. They aren't building a curriculum from scratch. They're scaling up an existing, respected, and a very deep capability.
But what's the challenge there? How does a place like PMA Kakul, for example, go from being a Pakistani national academy to a unified alliance institution? That sounds like a huge logistical lift.
It's a massive shift. Logistically, they have to physically adapt to house and train hundreds, maybe thousands of foreign officers at once, all with different cultural backgrounds. Doctrinally, they have to weave the new unified doctrine from the MDU into their existing curriculum, making sure the alliance's needs come first. And the instructors themselves have to be retrained to teach these new standardized SOPs to a very diverse international student body.
So it's this pre-existing infrastructure and reputation that allows Pakistan to anchor the whole effort. to host the central MDU and spread the new doctrine through all the member states.
It gives them the institutional gravity. They can act as the primary incubator for that shared battlefield culture. They already have the facilities, the curriculum framework, and critically, the experienced staff who are used to training foreign officers. It smooths over a lot of the political friction you'd get if a smaller or less established nation were picked for that central role.
It turns a national asset into a foundational alliance-level resource.
That's it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the hardware, the SOPs, the institutions, all the tangible mechanical stuff. But an alliance, especially a military one, it can't run on technical manuals and procurement lists alone.
No, it can't.
So now we have to shift focus to the human factor, what the doctrine calls the emotional glue that holds this whole thing together.
Right. If the standardized weapons are the bones and the doctrine is the brain, then the human relationships built during training, that's the blood. Without it, the body is technically perfect, but it's lifeless.
And the doctrine is very intentional about this. It lists specific human qualities that are meant to be cultivated by forcing officers and soldiers from different countries to train side by side, to share barracks, to share meals, to share hardship.
First and foremost is trust. Simple, absolute, unwavering trust. The trust that the unit on your flank, which is made up of soldiers from a country you might not know much about, will hold its ground, that they'll do their job competently, that they'll cover you if you have to pull back.
And you can't build that kind of trust in a classroom.
No. That only comes from shared physical and mental hardship, from succeeding together in really demanding training exercises. The second quality is unity and a shared identity.
How so?
They stop seeing themselves only as a Saudi soldier or a Jordanian soldier or a Nigerian soldier. They start to see themselves first as a member of this unified defense force. That new, bigger professional identity is essential for cohesion. It helps eliminate national biases when making command decisions under pressure.
And this creates what you call the human side of interoperability.
Yes. We talk about technical interoperability for radios, but human interoperability is knowing the cultural tics, the command styles, the strengths and weaknesses of the allied commanders you're depending on in a chaotic situation. It's being able to predict how your partner thinks.
And all of this is built on a foundation of respect and loyalty.
Respect for the alliance's standards and loyalty not just to your own flag, but to the alliance's shared goals and, most importantly, to the actual people you trained with who are now counting on you to do your job.
There's a core belief here, a kind of logic chain that drives the whole strategy.
There is. The blueprint basically says it's a simple but profound progression. Officers who train together will command together. Then they will fight together. And ultimately, they will win together.
It's a cascading effect.
Yeah.
If you have that trust and shared identity that was forged during training, then commanding a complex operation becomes infinitely smoother. The decision makers are already speaking the same language. They share a professional history. It takes the guesswork out of it.
And this really brings us back to the crucial transformation we talked about at the start. Joint training is what moves this whole project from being just a political idea, something talked about in diplomatic forums, into a real, tangible force that can actually operate under fire. The alliance stops being a concept and becomes an operational reality ready to deploy.
A real force that can be counted on, not just on paper, but in the most chaotic environments imaginable. That human element created in those shared training centers is the final proof that the blueprint has moved beyond theory and into the realm of real, sustainable military power.
So to recap, we've taken a real deep dive today into the nuts and bolts, the rigorous mechanics of turning 57 different militaries into one unified shield. We started by challenging that old definition of military power, showing how this doctrine prioritizes discipline, doctrine, and culture over just budgets and hardware.
We laid out the scale of the interoperability gap, that huge chasm created by different weapons, different comms, different tactics. And then we walked through the solution, that centralized, three-tiered educational structure. The strategic brain of the Muslim Defense University, the specialized staff colleges, and the tactical backbone of the junior leaders' academies.
We covered the hard, complex work of technical standardization, everything from the caliber of a bullet and the unified languages of English and Arabic to the specific SOPs for urban warfare and air defense. And we highlighted Pakistan's unique role as the training heart, using its existing respected institutions to anchor the entire effort.
And we just finished on the human factor, the deliberate creation of trust, shared identity, and loyalty, which is what's supposed to turn political will into genuine, unified military muscle ready for first contact with an enemy.
And the central argument of the blueprint is stark and clear. A Muslim NATO without this kind of formal joint training system is logistically impossible. It's designed to fail the first time coordinated action is truly needed. But an alliance built on these standards, according to the doctrine, is designed to be invincible because of its cohesion and its predictability.
So we'll leave you, as always, with a final provocative thought to take with you. Considering the unbelievable complexity of this whole project, I mean, standardizing 57 different supply chains, hundreds of unique tactical procedures, all those different communication systems, what do you think will ultimately be the most fragile point for this alliance in the long run?
Is it the huge technical challenge of unifying the hardware and the logistics? Or is it the more subtle, more complex, messy, generational process of building deep human brotherhood, trust, and shared loyalty between officers from vastly different cultures who may have competing national interests? A unified force needs both the perfectly calibrated machine and the perfectly aligned heart. The real question for their future success is which one of those breaks first under pressure.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the blueprint for unified doctrine. We'll see you next time.